Good morning, guys. All right, today we're going to be moving on to cell respiration. And cell respiration is sort of like the opposite of photosynthesis, but it's with animals, right? So that's how animals get our energy. But while we're doing this, think about photosynthesis still, and think about the whole cycle of photosynthesis and cell respiration, okay? Because it's how the environment, like animals and plants, maintain homeostasis. So big idea of biology, right? So let's move on. All right, so cell respiration is really just the process how we animals break down food in the presence of oxygen, right? So that's what we breathe in, and it releases energy, and that energy is ATP, right? So remember, ATP stores energy, ADP releases energy, and those two carrier proteins are what's carrying the energy around our cells, right? So cell respiration is us using oxygen, breaking down food molecules to make us have energy, right? So it takes place in the cytoplasm and the mitochondria. So it's going back and forth there, sort of. And it can be aerobic. That's with oxygen. There's also anaerobic. That's without oxygen. And we're going to look at that in a second. Okay. So here's the formula for cell respiration. If you notice, it's sort of the reverse of photosynthesis. Remember, photosynthesis was CO2 plus water, add energy in, and it gives us oxygen and glucose. Well, this is oxygen and glucose as the reactants, and the products are CO2, water, and energy. All right, there's three main stages of cell respiration. There's glycolysis, there's the Krebs cycle, and there's the ETC, the electron transport chain. All right, glycolysis means splitting of glucose. So glucose is the food source, and this all happens out in the cytoplasm. All right, so glucose is that 6-carbon molecule, that's C6H12O6. It's broken down into two pyruvic acids, and they sort of split it in half. All right, so if it's C6H12O6, it becomes C3H6O3. It splits into two of them, and two ATP molecules are made there. And this here does not require oxygen, okay? After glycolysis, if oxygen is present, it moves into the Krebs cycle. If it's not, it goes into fermentation. So the Krebs cycle moves into the mitochondria. This happens in the mitochondria. And this requires oxygen. And this breaks down those two pyruvic acids into CO2 and energy. And it transfers that energy over to the ETC, the ETC is where we're going to make all of our energy at. So this right here, the Krebs cycle, breaks down those pyruvic acids, and it moves into the ETC. But right here, we make two more ATPs. That's positive, right? That's good. The ETC, this is where all of the magic happens for protein synthesis. All right, so this occurs in the mitochondria as well. It uses that energy from the Krebs cycle, those two ATPs, it uses that to do this whole thing. So 34 ATPs are made in the electron transport chain, all right? So total ATPs made is 38. So glycolysis makes 2, Krebs cycle makes 2, and the electron transport chain makes 34. Right, so it just goes from glycolysis. If oxygen is present, it goes into the Krebs cycle, then it goes to the ETC. If no oxygen is present, we go into something else. All right, so here you go. Glycolysis comes in, some ATP made, pyruvic acid goes into here, ETC go over here. Here's a sort of flow chart for you. All right, so glycolysis, 2 ATPs, Krebs cycle, 2 ATPs, ETC, 34 ATPs. All right, like we said, if there's no oxygen, we go into fermentation. And there's two different types of fermentation. There's alcoholic and there's lactic acid. Okay? Pyruvic acid gets converted over to ethyl alcohol in the fermentation stage. This occurs in yeast and other microorganisms like bread, and also it happens in alcohol, so like beers and wines and stuff. All right, lactic acid, this is what happens when you're working out, your body's just burning, your muscles are burning, and you have that soreness. This is lactic acid, all right? So this is when pyruvic acid is converted to lactic acid. And this is made when your muscles are going through rapid exercise and there's not enough oxygen to support them. And that's like working out, running hard, that type of stuff. All right, so this causes what causes muscle soreness. Nothing major, but anaerobic, bread, working out. Yogurts are another good source of this. That's how we make yogurts. All right, so the chemical pathway here is glycolysis. Normally, with oxygen, for us, it goes to Krebs cycle electron transport chain. But not enough oxygen, and this could be just, we have oxygen, we might breathe in it, but not enough for like when we're working out. So it goes to fermentation, and it makes alcohol or lactic acid in our muscles. All right? Hope that sort of sums it up. This is a good diagram here, though. No ATP is made down here, right? No ATP. All right? So oxygen is present. Glycolysis makes a couple ATPs. If oxygen's there, goes to the Krebs cycle, make a couple more ATPs, and this is when CO2 is made. So CO2 gets released. And then those two ATPs push over to the electron transport chain where a lot of ATPs are made. 34 are made. And some oxygen's coming in here, and water